not like we have a whole bunch of cues there that we have to wait for.
I'll hit record and I'll run the music and see.
Yeah.
The levels. I never touched them.
But
as long as you're not like down on it like this.
Hello. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
But after doing some band shots with that, and then of course I had to have a shot or two in the evenings after work, and it didn't last long.
Let's start it with some Blackberry here.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool.
We're rolling anyway.
Are we?
Yeah.
Are we live?
Yeah. Well, we're not live.
Or is it Memorex?
We're Memorex moment tonight.
Nice.
Gonna do some Crown Royal Blackberry here, straight on the rocks.
I like it. It's good stuff.
There you go.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Try it.
Oh yeah, Crown Blackberry.
You know, it's
tasty.
It is tasty. What's the other stuff that's blackberry like this?
Brandy.
Is it Yasnafka? Yaz?
I don't think
blackberry brandy?
I don't think. Is Yaz blackberry? I thought it was licorice.
Is it? I thought one of them was blackberry brandy, but
it could be.
This is my first foray into the Crown Royal flavors.
I've had quite a bit of.
I have a bottle of the apple stuff, but gosh, it's been so long since I've tried it.
Mm-hmm. I usually do the crapple.
They have so many flavors of stuff now. Oh
Crown apple, or I've done the peach.
How's that?
That's okay. We call it creech or crapple, because of the crown.
I got the Jim Beam pineapple. I think I was talking about that before.
Yeah, we had a little sample.
I'm into my second bottle of that. I love that stuff. But I mix it. I don't drink it straight like this. I drink straight. So, oh, man. If you are listening, follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube. Fight the Fear Podcast. Look us up. You'll find us there.
Yeah.
If you
Hope to bring you interesting topics.
Yeah. If you're looking to support us further, go to patreon.com. and look us up there. With that said, so I wanted to dip into sort of nostalgia, mystery, kind of thing. And what better nostalgic memory for us as kids of the 80s than the murder? A murder.
Yes, that is very.
But the murder of John Lennon. He was the symbol of, our parents.
It captured the headlines.
Pop music for our parents. There was no better.
Yeah.
You had Elvis, obviously, but I mean, as far as music goes, John Lennon was like our parents' hero.
Right. The Beatles were iconic.
And anybody, when we were kids, the Beatles music was pretty prevalent in our lives on the radio, records.
It still lives. I mean, I know so many people that still love the Beatles.
Definitely. So I don't know that we'll be able to unpack all of this, because let me preface all of this with saying that this is a lot of conspiracy theories that are not ours. They are not the opinions of the guys that you're listening to right now. So I want to say this, that
or may not be.
It is not presented as fact.
Right.
There are a lot of theories. Some of it you could sort of find a line and take a trail, and some of it's completely out of left field. So I'm going to try to cover it all and talk about it all
until proven guilty.
And it might be a couple episodes, because I don't know that we'd have enough time, because it's this nice meandering long trail that it comes from the death of a superstar, and then all of a sudden it sort of becomes more about the killer or killers. And
or
the lore, the further you get away from it, the more the conspiracy takes over, rather than the actual act of losing this beloved star.
But you know what they say? There's a grain or a kernel of truth everywhere.
Always.
So, and sometimes 2 or 3 kernels.
Always. You can make popcorn. But so obviously it was 1980. John Lennon's on the sidewalk, just returned from the studio. He's with his wife.
Was the hotel?
It was where he lived.
Right.
Don't ask me for facts. John David Chapman shoots him in the back.
It started with a B, I thought.
Shoots him in the back 5 times, and then sits down with a copy of what book was it? Oh my gosh,
Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye, and tells the cops, I did it. Take me in.
Right.
Okay. The investigators now in New York, in this borough at this time, they had 24 detectives for 1 million people, 1 million residents. If they got a dude that says I did it, I'm thinking they're going to be like, no problem.
Right.
Sign the paperwork and let's go. So as far as trials go, there wasn't much of a trial. It was just anything after that was more or less speculation in the news. Many years later, he was able to be interviewed, wrote letters to people, did a couple phone things and things like that. He was up for parole in 2022. He was denied parole. He did finally own up to it and say, you know, I did an evil act. I wanted notoriety. But there's so many other things around this back in the day. So let's back up.
Okay.
So a lot of people are looking at all of this through a wider lens now, and they're just finding every little thing. Okay. So John Lennon was 6 months away from becoming a U.S. citizen. He was a superstar on the highest level of superstar. And the Beatles had been broken up since 1970. So this is, you know, going on 10 years. I guess during this time he had mended fences with the guys. They had written some music. He had even played some music with Harrison and Starr. And then him and McCartney had finally mended their fences and were hanging out. Uh-huh. They were playing music together in the living room because Lennon's house was like a studio, basically. They were playing music and talking and joking around. I guess there was one time they joked around about going and appearing on Saturday Night Live because there was a running joke on there that it was like a running offer to get them to come on. And I think it was Bill Murray or somebody would say, let's see how much we've raised. And they'd say, we have $1,200 if you guys will come on. And there was one night they saw it and made a joke that said, maybe we should go do it. And never did it. But Paul McCartney's been on several times. Anyway, so there's the big conspiracy that, okay, the government did not want this superstar who was a leftist view, anti-war protester, in a time when things were very volatile, and it goes to show you as much today as back then how the press can influence things, and they were afraid that this superstar could influence a mass of voting residents of the country, and he's considered a foreigner, so an outside influence. So they're saying that, okay, they put the kibosh on him becoming a resident to kill the influence, and not only kill him, but kill his influence over our side, our people,
Right.
So some people were saying that one of the theories was they took him out before he could become a citizen to sort of endanger us anymore and get his hooks in us anymore. And so then it goes on that there's this theory with the shooter, Chapman, that it wasn't even him, that it was actually the writer, Stephen King.
Okay.
My thoughts exactly.
Okay.
I'm like, how? Now I'm going down
Wasn't
another
he
rabbit
busy
trail.
writing books?
These are all the different paths you can go down. So you have this thing about citizenship and his sort of influence, an influencer, if you will.
Right.
Then you have the thing about just protest music, which really, what they had the song Revolution that was 10 years before. Why didn't they try to do something back then? He didn't have an album out of any great success, and he was doing the double fantasy that had Imagine on it and stuff. It was just out right when he was killed. So I don't see the connection there, but that's a connection that's being made. So you have that. You have Stephen King, which I had to go down that one. Somebody's written a book about it. These guys, if you look at pictures of Chapman and you look at pictures of King back then, they're dead ringers. They really are. But it was something to do with Stephen King was an agent for the secret government thing and took it out, followed his orders, took out the hit, and then they had the patsy was Chapman. That's one. Then the other one was he was in the military, which he was, and I think it was 5 years before he was like in Beirut or something like that, and he was training and doing all this different stuff, they say, to be an assassin for the government, like a hitman. Whatever they say he's going to do, he's going to be the good soldier. And this was one of his hits. And then he was turned into the patsy again, and that made the scapegoat for it to hide any government involvement. Now we're going to go deeper.
One question.
I'm just laying out a lot of the theories before we get into them.
One question though: Did Chapman ever give a reason for doing it? Like, did he?
Not until many years later when he said,
Okay.
"I knew I was doing evil, and I just wanted to be famous for it. I wanted to commit this act."
Early on, he didn't give a reason.
I think early
he
on,
just said he did it, and
as far as I know, he just said he did it, and then after that, the press took over.
Yeah. Okay.
So we go a little into this thing where he was in Beirut and things like that. They say that it was MK Ultra, that the CIA and the FBI was drugging him unknowingly, and then once he was under the influence of like LSD and things like that, they would
plant those
seeds,
seeds,
seeds through video, through sound, through music, through subliminal messages, through straight up just telling him, this is what's going on. You need to stop it. You need to help us, et cetera, et cetera. That was kind of the root of MK Ultra. Some of the things I read about that were pretty wild.
Oh yeah,
LSD was heavily used, and they would dose people without them knowing through a drink or food, and they would try different levels.
That's Operation Climax.
Yes,
where they had a brothel in San Francisco, I think, maybe somewhere on the West Coast in California anyway. Yeah, they had a brothel set up. They had the prostitutes, the hookers, the sex workers, whatever you want to call them today, the ladies of the night.
Agents of the CIA.
And
secret agents.
They would use them to dose the clients, and then they would watch their behavior behind a two-way mirror, the CIA or whoever was doing it.
Nobody was jerking off, I'm sure.
And they would see how these guys react, and some of them didn't take it too well.
Oh,
I think there was some psychotic breaks, and maybe even somebody jumped out a window, and because they were unsuspecting. So what the hell's happened to them? Right. All of a sudden they realize it, but yeah, it's a real thing.
If it's sex,
not to sidetrack us.
If it's sex, all in the name of research, I'm all for it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so that was the thing that I was so I was looking into that more. So there's all these. So whether they're true or not, I'm just discovering the theories. I have to read into it a little bit just to see. Okay, why would they say Stephen King? Mm-hmm. Well, they're claiming he was under MK Ultra influence, and the writing was sort of like when we talked about savants and things. He was like a savant. He would just be like an unstoppable writing machine, and they're like, we're going to dose him, and once we get him dosed, we're going to convince him that it's one of his stories, and then we're going to control him and get him to do this, follow through on it, carry it out, and then convince him that it was just a dream, part of one of his dreams that turn into his stories. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I mean, I get the theory there, but I don't see what you gained from telling me many years later. Obviously, it's this other celebrity taking out a celebrity. Now you have celebrities taking out celebrities. Yeah. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it's a theory. And there is a book on it that just came out, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. The next one would have been, so in the little investigating that they did, there's some things in sealed documents that were before the Freedom of Information Act. And you're not allowed to pull these particular files, and they all are based around 3 days in the city of Chicago. They know Chapman was in Chicago for 3 days preceding this shooting. And any investigator that's ever been on it, that's been found out to have been on it, is mum. They won't say a word. And if they say, go try to get the DA or whoever it was to tell you, they'll say, sorry, that's sealed. So it's a dead end. So then that just makes these theories explode. All I can think of is it's just information that you can't access, and it could be mundane. The dude could have been sightseeing. He could have been.
But is that true, though? I mean, there's Freedom of Information Acts, but it has to be only up until a certain point in history.
This stuff was already sealed, and anybody that's tried to get it has been told it's grandfathered.
That's just weird.
And it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't help the
doesn't make
conspiracy.
Any sense. No, not at all. It feeds it.
Right.
So that was one thing I read. And, again, I'm not presenting this stuff as factual, so I'm sure there's a lot of holes even in the way I'm giving it back to you. But there's this mystery about these 3 days. Like, what was he doing?
Yeah.
Was he preparing? Did he do a dry run somewhere in a big city? and then he was going to come to New York, which is obviously always busy, and then he's going to go through with the act. Okay. So then there was even something with Honolulu in Hawaii, that he had been in Hawaii before this. Yeah. And they go there and nobody knows anything. And I'm like, I just want to know how the dude's got this travel budget.
To me, though, a dry run in a city that you're not actually going to be in. So if you're doing a dry run, you're checking response time, you're checking, logistics, all that stuff.
Not to mention the fact that when he did this, there were people standing within arm's reach.
So eyewitnesses right there that watched him do this. So it was either Chapman or somebody that looked similar to him. I'm sure there was, eyewitness testimony, visual IDs, but you said he stayed there. He sat down,
opened the book, started reading.
I don't know how you can say it's somebody else,
right?
A switch and bait with Stephen King,
right? The MK Ultra stuff, the military stuff, the FBI, the CIA. That's not even the nuttiest theory.
Let's hear it.
Another one is that President Nixon and President Reagan were personally putting encrypted messages in magazines that they knew he was reading and that he was deciphering to get his orders from.
Okay.
So,
I can debunk that right now, because even if they wanted to do it, they weren't personally doing it. They were sending somebody else to do it. But
they got a lot of spare time. So you see what I'm saying is the further we get, the wider this gets with these theories. But when we say there's a grain of truth maybe in there, there's something somewhere in all of these. I am a skeptic among skeptics, but that's
a little wacky.
There's a string, right? So like I said, it becomes more about
a president,
the killer than it does the guy who lost his life.
A president and a former president are colluding,
working together. Hey man, how did you do that?
Secret messages in a magazine.
What was the letter? What was the code for the letter G again?
And I think they could do better as far as delivering a message to a person, anyone.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
I'm hitting the bullshit button.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where did that one go? So I can understand that. So a fact is that the Attorney General did not care for Lennon's open, he's very vocal in the press, because this guy could get an interview on a TV show, a snap of a finger, no problem. He could promote something for someone, he could hurt someone, he could help someone, so.
Yeah, much loved.
So the Attorney General did not appreciate him going on these TV shows and radio interviews and newspapers and things and being so vocally anti-war, because it's viewed as anti-American. If America's interest is we need to take somebody out to better the world, if this guy's against that, then he's anti-American. So I can tell you that sentiment did flow, because I can remember as a kid, my father, the Beatles would come up. We didn't have a lot of Beatles records in our house growing up. I want to say we had maybe 2 or 3, and they were like compilations and like the Help album or something like that. Good music is the way I see it. And I think that was more from my mom's collection. But if you brought up John Lennon, I don't remember how or why. I remember just a couple different times his name specifically coming up, maybe in the news or something. And my dad would say, quote unquote, Lennon is a fucking communist.
Yeah.
So whatever he heard in the press, he was hearing what he wanted to hear out of it, whereas the supporters would hear what they want to hear. Just like today.
Yeah.
Anything. Yeah. If you catch a headline and it's this guy's this, my dad firmly believed that Lennon was a communist. And he would say, and the thing is, as a kid, I didn't necessarily like Lennon or even really know, like you said, we knew the Beatles. I didn't necessarily know John Lennon. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wouldn't have any thought of a person creating music. I'm just listening to the song.
We were just kids when this
I'm just listening to the
developed.
song. Yeah, I'm just listening to the song. And so I can remember wondering, like, why would he say that about another person? It had nothing to do with who it was or what their status was. It was like, why is he saying this about another person? I didn't really understand, obviously you're calling somebody communist. So now I'm thinking, well, what's that? And then why would you call somebody that? And then, keep that like anger in your belly.
Dirty word.
There was like anger in his belly for years. Lennon's a fucking communist. I'm like, wow, okay. But I didn't have an opinion either way. I just didn't understand the why. Like, okay, tell me why. Why are you saying this? Like,
right.
What's the guy always say? Prove me wrong or convince me, fight me, whatever, just tell me why. Like I don't want to think that about somebody because I don't know, I don't know. But he was firmly convinced that he was a communist. So if the government had people that they viewed in that light because they were on that level, then they were definitely reaching some people on the other end of that spectrum, And like I said, he could call up Mike Wallace or 60 Minutes or whoever and say, hey, do you want to talk about the Beatles reunion? What? Yeah, get him on here. I hate America. No war. He could say whatever he wanted at that point, So he had some influence. And I think, fast forward to 2025, you have influencers, and they can get 1 million or 2 million followers, and they can say, buy this product, and it sells.
Sure.
And they can say, follow this artist, and they sell tickets or, whatever. So yeah, the president thing was a little far-fetched. The MK,
I definitely think that
if he was in the military and there was some MK Ultra stuff going on, I can probably buy in that there's a possibility he may have been in a pool of soldiers that might have got dosed just to see a reaction or something. Okay. And maybe somebody picked that out of some investigative material, and then it just took on a life of its own. The thing about Beirut and this and that, well, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time in Beirut and all these other places. So who's to say that wasn't just part of his everyday military experience? I don't know the connection where that would matter, other than the theory that he was training there to come back to take out whoever they said. And, oh, by the way, here's your first target. And then, why would a government spend all this time and money and effort to train an assassin to only give them one target and then make them a patsy and stick them in prison? That doesn't flush with me either, because you'd want the guy to continue. Hey, good work. They think it's Stephen King. Come on over here. We got another one for you.
If he was that well trained, why did he just sit down and wait for them in order to be captured? You would think you'd be trained in the art of evasion, right? You do it. And not in broad daylight, but there's way more to that story than the
I think there's something to be said for the effect of your actions putting stress on your system and how you react. You're never going to know how you're going to react when you do something until you do it. And who's to say that it just wasn't a blind reaction? He committed the act and just went into shock and just sat down looking at a book. Who knows?
I think the obvious answer and the most logical is it was just a schizophrenic episode. This guy believed, that he was going to do the world good, or he wanted attention, or he wanted fame, or, there's all kinds of people that kill celebrities for whatever reasons. They stalk them. They think they should be together. They think they should be best friends. They think whatever. You slighted me.
They feel like they know them somehow.
Absolutely. And owe them something. Right. So that the obvious answer is this is just a guy that either saw a threat and went on a schizophrenic rage. And
that's what I think was maybe he, like my father, he bought into the negative side of things and thought, this guy's screwing things up for us. But here's the thing: I'm
an American, and you're talking against me as a soldier.
Yeah, you're in my
talking
country,
against me as a military man.
I've got no beef with somebody that wants to see peace. How they go about it, I guess, can make the difference. And But so the funny thing, not funny, but an odd thing of that day in 1980, he shows up in front of that apartment with a copy of the new album, waits for Lennon to come out and says, "Hey, I'm a big fan. Would you mind signing the record?"
Right.
Takes a photo with him. He signed it. He said, "No problem, man." Signs it. Talks to some other fans for a few minutes. Gets in a car, goes to the studio. He's at this was like 5 p.m. Now this dude waits for him. I'm assuming so it would be dark. Comes back after 10 p.m. with his wife. She goes ahead of him to go in. He's got cassettes with him. He actually had a cassette of a piece of music he was working on to give to Paul McCartney. Plus, he had another song that he was working on with some other guys. I believe there's a name of the song out there. It was, I think, something to do with Harrison and Starr. But anyway, he was done with his record, so he was going to try and squeeze some sessions in before doing the press, because now he was going to probably be weeks away from doing press, probably some shows, probably some television stuff, I'm guessing. So in the downtime, he was like, I'm going to work with my buddies.
Right.
And he had just recently said, like a week before this in an interview, maybe a month before his death, that he says, we were sour with each other. We were bitter at each other. There was a lot of animosity. Some years have passed now. It's been 10 years. So now I'm looking back going, what if we got back together and just did some music? We don't have to it doesn't have to be the Beatles like a big production. It could just be us together in a room doing what we do. So he was having those sort of melancholy feelings and time heals all wounds kind of thing,
Right.
So he was I feel like maybe these guys were all in a good place because obviously, in the 60s, everybody was drugged out of their minds and they're making money and women and cars and houses and kids and, fame and fortune and everything ruining them, So as like
taking their focus
for the diehard fans, they were probably really they probably loved hearing that wow, maybe the Beatles will get back together, But,
Sure.
But it wasn't so much that he wasn't saying so much that they would get back together, but that they would be together as their friendships and stuff again, And they had said that him and Paul had been tighter than ever again. So, that's cool that you can kind of grow up together as kids, have things fall apart as adults.
Yeah.
And then you get hindsight when you get out away from it a little bit and you can go, okay.
Yeah. What's important?
Let's get together, guys. There's no need for all this horse shit, So anyway, like I said, he comes back that evening, fresh out of these sessions and hanging out with his wife and stuff and producers or whoever. And from the way it's described to me, she must have been walking in front of him or ahead of him or already in the building or something. He's talking to some fans. He turns his back and without a word, you would think if Chapman had this rage or something, that he would say something, yell something, call him a name, something. Completely silent. Just shot him 5 times in the back.
Right.
And people were wondering where the album is because it's autographed. There's a story that the cops who confiscated the weapon, they still had it in the lockup. So whenever certain people from the press would come around, they would eventually get a relationship going with these guys. They'd see them a lot, and they'd say, hey, I got another question. I want to talk to you again, kind of follow this little lead. And one guy got to know these cops a little bit, and there's a rumor that they let him go into the shooting range and shoot that actual weapon.
Wow.
And keep one of the shells that were still in it. And I'm thinking, well, if it was a 6-shooter, that was the last bullet.
Wow. Yeah.
Or if they found a handful of ammo on him and it was in the lockup.
Mm-hmm.
So the rumor was that, because I'm going to take it as rumor, the guy was allowed to shoot one round out of it and then keep the casing
for it,
which I thought was odd.
Uh-huh.
But it does sound like some boneheaded shit people would do. I'm not going to say police. I'm going to say people. I think people do boneheaded stuff sometimes just for the thrill of saying,
they
I
could
did this
also,
for you.
slip them some cash and
Why don't you let me see those files nobody's allowed to see?
All kinds of stuff goes on. Who knows?
So it wasn't this thing where it was like the day the music died type of thing. Like, because had this happened, say, in 67 or 68, when the Beatles were at their peak and announced, hey, we're not doing this anymore. You got one more album coming from us and we're done. They were working on that last album and they had already said, this is it. And they did the documentary thing with Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney. And they were like, what did they do for the last concert? And Lennon was like, the last concert's going to be on the roof of this building when we're done in this session. We're going upstairs. We're playing on the roof. They're filming it. We're done. And that's it. And that was their last show. Had that happened back then, I could see it being much more dramatic. It's kind of interesting to see that it was a decade after their stardom hit its, probably the peak was probably even before that. But to see him as an older guy still doing music and kind of able to rest on his laurels a little bit if he wanted to.
Sure.
But he was like, hell with it. He did a double album, He did other songs and stuff too. But I think about that sometimes. Like, some of your favorite artists, they have sort of an arc. They come out with a debut. Everything's great. They follow it up with something that's even better or just as good. They're beloved. Let's say that somebody's lucky enough to do that 3 times in a row. Eventually things will start to wane and there'll be some songs on the album that aren't that great and kind of like, okay, they peaked. Yeah. It's would you rather see them just stop then because they recognize it, or try to keep squeezing everything they can out of it and then they just start to lose it, and then you go, oh God, this sucks. So it's interesting that not a lot of people have a career. I don't know anybody that would have, I can say, that has a career like the Beatles. There's just no comparison. The closest thing I could think of would be like Led Zeppelin almost was able to pull it off on every album except for that last one, because it was sort of a mix of songs that were like partially finished, not finished, or finished from other sessions, and they just slapped it together and made it a record after John Bonham died. But like, they're, to me, like the closest I can think of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like their span of 9 years or whatever was amazing. Just like the Beatles. The Beatles had over 300 songs. Every song's a banger. I mean, nobody's that prolific. And it was at a time when nobody else was sort of dynamic like that. These dudes knew proper music and how to put it together. And it was just the way the chemistry of those 4 guys mixed when they played music that just will never be replicated at all or duplicated or whatever. So like I said, having that great success and that artistic output and that gift out to the world, a decade later, he was sort of on his own and able to look back on that. And then in between all of that, he decides he wants to use his platform for what he believes in, and then it basically eventually got him killed, is the way I see it, because like you said, here's this person that's radical in their own way, sort of like you said, you're against me, so I need to rid the world of you, and then that'll get me a piece of fame for taking out the biggest famous person ever. And what happened after, one of the things that happened after this was there was a huge increase in celebrities hiring security, because nobody ever really did, because they were never on that level. But now they're all scared out of their wits, because anybody even on a middle level from there was like, you don't have eyes in the back of your head, and it was from the back. So I want somebody watching my back. So that became this huge industry in and of itself. You had, Elvis and guys like that would have huge entourages and stuff. But it was said that Hollywood stars, movie stars, even aging stars would hire security after this. Right. Because now everybody's paranoid.
So maybe it was the security union that did it.
We need some business. But like, it was like a big turning point in history for celebrities, because there was a time when no matter how big you were, obviously, you could walk down the street.
Yeah.
And it sounded to me like he was pretty appreciative and cool about it. I mean, you know you're famous when people are waiting outside the door for you every day. And the thing was, I don't know that paparazzi was such a problem back then either, because I don't think like people weren't so hungry for that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like now they want to catch a video of you and get you to answer a question. Or
there was only so many news outlets.
Well,
newspapers or TV stations.
Yeah. You had your like little
radio
magazines.
stations.
You had the little magazines and stuff, but people still trusted like the Wall Street Journals and the big newspapers and things like that.
So I think it's more likely. Here, two scenarios here. Chapman either was a trained killer and he went and got an autograph, got a signed copy of the new album as kind of a test to see how close he could get to him and see what's around. And then as a trained killer, come back, kill him for unknown reasons, and then give himself up to be not even try to escape. Seems odd. Or here's a supposed fan and he felt some sort of slight from Lennon. Like, okay, you signed my copy, but I thought now we're going to be friends and you didn't really invite me in or want me around. You kind of gave me the cold shoulder here a little bit because you've got other fans, but I don't realize that because I think you and I are connected and I'm your best friend now. And you gave me a slight.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, now I'm going to get you back.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it was in 2022, he was up for parole and he told the board he did know what he was doing. It was evil intent. And he wanted the fame of taking out like the most famous person he could think of.
Sure.
But I also think there's that element of former military. He's hearing this guy run down what his country wants to do to secure its borders or peace or whatever. And he doesn't like what he's hearing. And it's exactly what you said that, well, I was down there one day and I see what's all this crowd commotion's about. Oh, it's John Lennon. Oh, okay. We'll see how this goes. We don't know. He could have been these 3 days that they're talking about and all this stuff could have been days that he was staking it out from across the street at a business or another hotel or an apartment or
right.
There's some mitigating circumstances and some other interconnecting things that we don't know about that I just couldn't see it being so random that he just walked up, oh, there's John Lennon, I'm going to get his autograph and then shoot him.
Right.
I think there had to be some planning there involved. And so maybe
either from a standpoint of a fan and I want to meet him and I think it's going to go differently than it did, or a planning of I don't care who John Lennon is, but he's talking against my country and my country
I think
wants
they had to
me
play
to
into it. It's in the press.
Yeah.
It's in the press that the Attorney General doesn't appreciate what John Lennon says about war and things like that.
Right.
And then you also...
Which is another side shoot of the whole industrial war complex on its own.
But you can also make your own opinion because the dude was on TV on the regular because he's in New York and there's talk shows. They're probably hitting him up constantly.
Yeah.
And he would talk about anything. And these guys, obviously, to get a soundbite, they would bring up stuff that they knew he would rail on. So, people would form their own opinion. But, I'm not going to, try to put myself in the mind of a serial killer, but, if I was trying to stake out a celebrity and I knew they were from a big city and owned a restaurant in that big city, obviously I'm going to go to the restaurant and see if I can see if they're there.
Sure.
And then try to pick up on a pattern. That's what I think he was doing, was at least enough to see, can I even get near this dude? Because I'm pissed. I'm hearing him say this on these talk shows. I'm reading it in the paper. I agree that he needs to, needs to be done. I'm going to take care of it.
So he didn't have the album signed as a fan. He did it as a test of how close can I get. Yeah.
No pun intended. I think you're dead on with that. That he thought he seems to be a nice guy and approachable, and that's his weakness. His kindness is his weakness, and I'm going to exploit that. And I'm going to be the one that takes care of this.
Right.
And I'll be hailed as a hero and seen in this light that I'll gain the fame, and in some ways, for a while there, like I said twice already, he did, because it became a lot more about him, because there's so much, it's like I said, any little gap becomes a mile wide, and that becomes this big mystery.
Yeah.
People want to make out that could actually be just as simple as what we just said. He watched him for a day or two, went over there, got the autograph, figured out that, hey, this dude is approachable. There's no bodyguard. There's no cops. He's mine for the taking. I'll wait till dark. Let's see if he comes back.
But to trade the idea of being famous for the next, 40 years of your life?
Yeah.
At least up until this point.
They'll both forever be tied in history because it'll be the great music that we got from this guy. He became
famous, but you were imprisoned.
To what happened to him, and here's what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
To give this guy parole, I don't know I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. Can we say he served his debt to society?
I would say if he's 40 years.
I think there's plenty of guys that got out in less time for worse.
Way less. For way worse.
It just happened to be it was the biggest celebrity in the world at the time. Is he
a threat to do it again to another celebrity? I doubt it at this age. And is he like I'm just going to be randomly killing people for the fun of it? Right. I doubt it.
Pushing 80 years old.
Yeah.
80 years old, I think,
Yeah, I doubt it.
He's like, probably wouldn't be able to adjust to the way things are now with the influx of information fast.
It would be tough. And what would he do? I mean, where would he live? Who would care for him?
Nobody.
He doesn't have any money.
Nobody.
Unless you have those crazy people that always fall in love with an inmate. Yeah.
I saw something where they were
railroaded.
They were letting them make
$50
dating videos from jail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was jokes. Oh my God, there's so many jokes.
I'm your captive audience.
There was a girl. She was kind of cute, and she says this and that. And then in the comment, I always read the comments, and it said, "I kill on the first date" and stuff like that. Oh shit!
I slay.
But yeah, I just thought I was like, what are these things that we like to talk about that have a theory attached to them? That were big like when we were kids, and nothing could overshadow that. I mean, good grief.
Yeah,
there's other ones out there.
Well, yeah, but it was big. I mean, we can get in the whole space shuttle conspiracy, the one that blew up in 88.
Even
we watched as kids in school. No, it wasn't even 88. It was 84, 82. We would have been. It was you and I
85 or 86.
You and I would have been
I was only like 7th grade because they brought the TV in to watch the launch.
I was thinking 6th or 7th.
I think it was 7th grade. I was in 7th grade because
so 12.
They wheeled the TV in to watch the launch, and then it went off. Right. And we're like, what happened?
Right.
And they're like, go back to class.
there is quite a conspiracy about that too. So. There's some things that we can talk about
Lennon,
in the 80s.
Yeah, a few years before Lennon, 70s, Elvis.
There you go.
There's plenty. There's plenty. And we'll cover them all.
We'll continue this theme.
We'll keep covering them all. So there's going to be the thread. I think we're going to hear more about MK Ultra. We're going to hear more about mind control. We're going to hear more about influence resulting in a death, or that there's a death that the rumor or theory is that it is attached to this stuff, just like with Lennon. And it's like I said, the further we get away from it, the deeper these theories will go, and you go down these rabbit holes and you find all this other stuff. So we're going to be exploring that. Yep. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening. Thanks. And remember Appreciate this.
Bullshit.
I think that's the bullshit button.
Bullshit. What?
Let me hit this.